Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Ruby Rose live stream here for a special Halloween edition. Today, we're going to be doing a very special reading of a historical book that some of you may recognize and may even know by heart, the story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman, also known as Sleepy Hollow. This was written by Washington Irving, and so definitely we'll have a little bit of history about it afterwards, but let's listen in as we hear the story of Sleepy Hollow.
It was the witching time of night when Ichabod traveled homeward. All the ghost stories he had heard over the years now came crowding upon his recollection. The night grew darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper into the sky. He had never felt so lonely. A splash by the side of a bridge caught his ear. In the dark shadow he beheld something huge, misshapen, dark, and towering. The hair rose upon his head. He stammered, "Who are you?" He received no reply. The shadowy object put itself in motion and bounded into the middle of the road. It appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, mounted on a black horse of powerful frame. Ichabod quickened his steed in hopes of leaving this mysterious horseman behind. The stranger, however, quickened to an equal pace. The odd silence of Ichabod's companion was soon fearfully accounted for upon seeing his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in a coat, Ichabod was horror-struck to perceive that he was headless, and that he carried his head before him on his saddle. In desperation, Ichabod rained kicks upon gunpowder. The spectre followed closely behind, and away they dashed as the stones went flying. As opening in the tree now cheered him with the hope that the church bridge was at hand, a place where, as the legend said, the horseman should be forced to stop. Ichabod cast a look behind him to see if the pursuer would vanish, but instead the goblin rose up in his stirrups in an act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod tried to dodge the horrible missile, but it was too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash, and he tumbled into the dust, with gunpowder and the goblin rider passing by like a whirlwind. The next morning, the old horse was found quietly cropping grass at his master's gate. The students were assembled in the schoolhouse, but no schoolmaster ever arrived. The track of the horse's hoofs dented in the road were traced to the bridge, and on the bank was found the house of the unfortunate Ichabod Crane, and close beside it, a shattered pumpkin. There was much gossip and speculation about the disappearance of Ichabod Crane. Some said he was carried off by the Headless Horseman. Others reported that he simply left town in humiliation for being dismissed by Katerina. However, shortly after his rival's disappearance, Brom Bones conducted Katerina in triumph to the altar. Whenever the story of Ichabod was related, Bones looked exceedingly knowing and always burst into a hearty laughter at the mention of the pumpkin. The old country wives, however, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away, and it is said that one may still hear his voice chanting a melancholy psalm tune along the solitudes of Sleepy Hollow.
The Headless Horseman is a mythological creature who appears in folklore since the Middle Ages, sometimes called a Doulahan. So think of Houlihan's, only Doulahan, which is basically a soul sucker. While there are many regional examples, Ireland depicted a demonic fairy stalking the land while carrying his head under his shoulder, which I would think at that point you'd need like a bag or something, but or we could think of an English spin, which is actually a fallen knight. And then, of course, the most legendary was our American folklore depiction, which was adapted into a tale written by Washington Irving in 1820. It has been since blustered into theater, literature, and movies. The American version goes, the horseman is a Hessian soldier, which is basically a German auxiliary support for the British soldiers during the American Revolutionary War. in 1776. And at that point, this poor guy has a cannonball fired at him, and he's decapitated, loses his head, perishes on the battlefield. And while his comrades carry his body away and eventually bury him in an actually existing town. So if you could tell me if you've been to this place, it'd be nice to know, comment below. It's called the Old Dutch Church in Sleepy Hollow. It's listed as a National Register for Historic Places in New York. So please tell me if you visited there. And of course, as the story goes, he rises each year as a malevolent demon who uses a pumpkin as a substitute and hurling ball towards souls while scouring the earth for his long lost head.
The reason why this story is significant is because this was written in 1820 after a period of time with the Revolutionary War, namely the battle in 1776. So this would have been a story that Joseph Robidoux, his family, his friends, people living in this geographical area would have been reading around the fireplace. This would have been folklore that it would have been handed down during the time frame that Joseph Robidoux was living and beyond. It's American folklore story that was adapted by Washington Irving. And so it's still a major significant Halloween story of this area.
Thanks so much for that, Brooke. That was fascinating information about the history of the story and why we talk about it here this week. So we do want to talk a little bit about what's going on here at the Row. As you know, we are still open for you guys to come by and check out all of the amazing things. Our celluloid exhibit is still going strong. I mean, we do have those magnets now. I want you guys to come by and get one of those. They're so good. They're so interesting looking, and they're so much fun to have access to them. Along with that, like we talked about last week, we do have the donation thing on our website. So please do go over there and donate a little to the Row to keep us open through the winter, and so we can start creating some of those amazing exhibits we've talked about in the past. And so as we talked about with the story, the story of Sleepy Hollow is kind of one of those timeless stories, kind of like Brooke talked about. They have a transition through multiple different medias. And that's really what keeps the story of the Headless Horseman living on. And, we don't even know where he's going to go from here. He may even be around our doorstep or even sitting in our lap for all we know. So thanks so much for joining us here today on this special Halloween edition of the Robidoux Live. We look forward to seeing you guys next week, and you guys have a great weekend.